Namaskar. Welcome to Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community. I'm Ashok Vyas. You're watching ITV Gold. As we open up this week's special edition of Vision of Asia, here are the top stories. A conversation with Dr. Bindu Balani about efficacy of vaccine for variants. A weekly special segment of This Week with Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh. We will have author of A Different Take, Dr. Balram Singh, sharing about his new book and how big tech companies are playing their role in important democracies like India. Karlekar talks to us about that, and Rohit Vyas views on Trump's acquittal from Senate after second impeachment. All this coming up right after these short messages. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community on ITV Gold. And this weekend, very important topic related to how vaccine is effective in dealing with the potential impact of COVID-19's variants. Dr. Bindu Balani talked to Aditi Lamba. Here are parts of that conversation.
There is the UK variant, there's a Brazil variant, and there's one from South Africa. They are saying right now that the UK variant seems to spread, the virus more fast, and it's also more transmissible. With the South African variant, due to that variant, South Africa had to stop its vaccine of AstraZeneca. So how are you looking at these variants and their impact on the existing vaccines and the vaccines that are about to come?
So, first and foremost, the variants are not new. Yes, we are learning about it a little bit more often now in the media, but the variants have been around since last March. So we had genetic sequencing done showing these particular changes occurring. But of course, case-based variants that actually made a clinical difference probably have started since the fall of last year, with the UK being probably the most likely of the cause, being the most commonest of this particular variant. So amongst the three variants that are currently around, the UK variant or the B117 is efficacious. The vaccine is efficacious against this particular strain. What we're looking at is where do these particular mutations occur in the virus that leads to whether these vaccines or monoclonal antibodies for treatments will work or not work. It all is dependent upon their binding sites. So with the UK variant, that particular binding site is still efficacious with these particular vaccines. The South African one, yes, it is going to be efficacious, but not at the 95% efficacy that we have today. There would be slight fall down of that particular folds, but we're starting with such a high bar of the mRNA vaccines efficacy that I think a little bit fold drop would still be okay for these particular variants. Regarding the AstraZeneca question that you asked me, yes, there has been clinical data on the clinical trials using the AstraZeneca and the South African participants, where nearly 50 to 90% of patients had the variants, where they found that the efficacy, instead of being the 66 and 72% that they quote in the US, was lower at 50%, 49 to 50%. But it's better than zero. So I still feel that having vaccines on board is going to be efficacious and it's going to be crucial in trying to get these variants under control. The last variant with the Brazilian one, with the P.1, that one I think is going to be a little bit more troublesome because it has multiple mutations. I think it's 17 mutations that it has. And out of those, 3 of them are at the receptor binding site. Why is that important? Because remember, all our current vaccines are targeted towards the spike protein antibodies. And if your variant kind of evades that immune system clearance, I think that would be the trouble one. So I think we have to keep a watch on what variants are in the community. And hopefully this fourth wave that we worry about is not going to be one which is going to be the difficult to treat.
Just discussing this fourth wave quickly, Doctor, we here in Tri-State in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, even Pennsylvania, saw the worst of this pandemic last year. How concerned are you looking at these variants that we may become an epicenter again? What are the chances?
So unfortunately, not northeast U.S., just like certain other ports, is a biggest port of call. With the global travel, with the how small the world is today, I think we are going to get more. And with the infectiousness and the closeness and the density of population in this northeast states, I think the spread, unfortunately, will also be much faster. And if we don't go ahead and do our social distancing and masking and hand washing, etc., I think we're going to be a little bit more troublesome.
Right, and you just mentioned mask, and I have to ask you, what is your take on double masking, which the CDC now has suggested as, adding another protective layer to against the virus? How are you looking at it? There are about 3 states that have actually lifted the mask mandate. Do you think that's wise right now?
I don't think it's wise at all. I think having a mask on is absolutely most essential than even 2 masks. I think having the double mask definitely increases the effectiveness of the masking. But I think just having a mask on appropriately, properly, on your nose, on your mouth, with a tight fit is, I think, probably the most crucial in requirement. So I think having universal masking is absolutely essential and should be maintained throughout all the states to try and help with as much drop in the inoculum as we can of the virus from one person to the other.
Right. Let's now dig into talking about the vaccine, doctor, because I have a couple of questions regarding it. The first question is, we know there's not a huge difference between the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine in terms of the mRNA technology that's been used, but are there differences in side effects or other differences you have seen in your research about these 2 vaccines?
So I think they're very comparable in their efficacy as well as effectiveness as well as side effect profiles. I think having a little bit of reactogenicity after the second shot in those who have never seen the COVID infection in the past. And why do I say that? Because if you've had COVID infection in the past, I think you can get the reactogenicity even with the first shot that you take with the vaccines. But that reactogenicity is, I think, very comparable to both of these mRNA technique vaccines that are currently around. Getting fevers, getting chills, getting body aches, getting soreness at the site of the injection, getting redness, a little bit of fatigue, etc. that occurs could happen in either or of these agents. The Bell's palsy that has been correlated, or with the media of the low platelets, etc. Those things are very far and few, and really have not had a direct correlation to the vaccine itself. I think they have to be looked at. I think they have to be monitored, given the fact that these are very new vaccines. I think we are all being very serious about any and or of these particular side effects, but I don't think it's really much of a difference with one or the other.
Right. And let's now look into Johnson & Johnson, doctor, because their vaccine dose is going to be a single dose, which could be a game changer. However, their efficacy is lower than Moderna and Pfizer. How are you looking at this vaccine? And is that efficacy enough right now for it to be distributed across the nation?
So I think it would be great if all of us could have the mRNA vaccine, right? It's 95% effective. But I think it's always supply and demand. And at this point, at this juncture, anything that we have today is going to be far better than nothing. So if there is a issue with the demand of and supply of the mRNA vaccines, I think having a 50 to 70% efficacy of any other vaccine that we have is going to be the crucial key. Plus the fact that it has a very significant advantage of being a single shot. I think that's phenomenal. I think having a vaccine that is going to give you that 50%, 80%, 60% efficacy very quickly within 2 to 4 weeks after taking a single shot is going to be far better than having zero efficacy at all, and or even down the road at the with the mRNA techniques, which still take at least 6 weeks, given the fact if you take Moderna, for example, it is 4 weeks of vaccine time and 2 weeks thereafter. So I think the added protection that you get with an earlier efficacy point, I think is far better than having zero.
And what
And
about
also, actually, let me put in one more word, that even though the efficacy overall is slightly bit lower, the efficacy in severe disease and hospitalized patients is great. It's 85 plus percent, which actually decreases the chances of you getting into a hospital. So yes, you may get COVID, and you may be in that small mild to disease category, but having being saved from severe disease is, I think, a big positive impact.
that is so true. We're just trying to hope the vaccine gets to everybody here because it's the
Agreed.
biggest weapon against this virus. What about AstraZeneca, doctor? The WHO, World Health Organization, just approved it to send it to poorer countries, in their effort to vaccinate all across the world. How are you looking at the research in AstraZeneca? Do you see it being approved here in the US?
So I think it is a phenomenal medicine again. Why? Because the maximum advantage that we have there is the ability to have that particular vaccine at room temperature. Right. So in certain areas, even in US, if you look at certain Midwest where they have to travel a long distance to get there, and where the number of people may not be as much, that to have a Pfizer unit having a storage of -70 may not be feasible. So I think having the ability to deliver vaccines to areas where there is financial economic burden, where there is less resources, etc. I think having an agent that's going to get you to that 50 to 60% efficacy is going to be very, very good. So I think having AstraZeneca on the armamentarium of approved EUA vaccines has been a great advantage to the world.
And now time to join Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh in this week's special edition of This Week with Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh. Namaskar. Another episode of This Week with Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh. Doctor, welcome. Namaste.
Namaskar, namaskar.
So now that we have observed Vasanta Panchami, we have also seen a second impeachment trial of President Trump. And there are many developments from India. We'll try to catch a few of them today. But I want to congratulate you because you kind of predicted that this impeachment trial is not going to go further. How do you feel having seen the whole, if we call it, the proceeding of the impeachment trial?
Well, I mean, this was kind of necessary. This exercise is necessary because in democracy, if someone perceived to break the law, has to go through this kind of exercise and impeachment and then trial. But we knew the outcome because it was this trial was more of a political trial rather than judicial trial. And therefore, outcome was very obvious. So whole impeachment was kind of dead on arrival because of number of senators you need to convict the former president. And therefore, it's not surprised that he got acquitted, but at least what they achieve is they showed the country again one more time that what happened on January 6th, which is deplorable and unacceptable. It should not happen, should not have happened. And that's all we come out of this. And I'm sure that will tarnish some image of former President Donald Trump.
So right after he was acquitted, there was some impromptu, spontaneous rally. People greeted him. That is the news. Having said that, do you see him being able to sustain the momentum and have a sort of a comeback as potentially a presidential candidate in 2024?
Well, I mean, time will tell. But right now, obviously, the Republican Party, he has complete control of the party. Because as you can see that those Republicans who went against him and voted with the Democrats, out of those 7, 2 were already censured and disciplined in their state GOP caucus, particularly in the Louisiana and I think it's in the North Carolina. So it means that still the party pretty much under his control. He has a grip on the party, and that's why I think it's early to say, but I'm sure he will play a very active role in 2022 when there will be some congressional and senate races, and he may play some role, important role, a significant important role in 24. I'm not sure whether he will run himself, but he may make a kind of difference who will run or who will get nomination.
Now, staying with America briefly, in terms of what you have seen, the initial uh, steps of President Biden for American economy, do you see a ray of hope sustained under President Biden for economic growth of America?
Well, I mean, we don't know, but at least what in the initial agenda is to pass through almost $2 trillion aid to COVID help to the people of the USA. That's a large, that is necessary, and that kind of large infusion of the money into the in the market or in the economy sometime can end up creating some inflation, and that's only concern we have. But I think whatever is necessary should be done, and hopefully his agenda will can pass through the Senate and Congress, since that is questionable because now both the parties are so polarized and divided, and so who will do what is unpredictable.
It looks like that is the new norm of democracy, whether it is America or India. I think President Trump also faced similar situation while he was not getting the due support, and the bipartisanship seems to have no place in American politics at the moment. So, moving towards India, and the same situation we see, but right now, uh, Prime Minister Modi is leading the party which enjoys majority. Yet, what you hear from opposition is pretty much totally opposing government tooth and nail on every issue. Do you see any change that might come about with this respect in India? And do you see this as a weakness of democracy?
No, it's not weakness of the democracy. This is a real soul of democracy. In in democracy, the opposition are supposed to oppose rightfully, or I mean genuinely, whatever is valid to oppose. And so opposition itself is not weakness of the democracy. On the
No, no.
contrary, it's a healthy thing to do for opposition to oppose and kind of find out a real problem with the whatever agenda government of day has. But they should not oppose just for sake of opposing it. They should oppose if there is some validity to it.
So you have very rightly chosen the word oppose rightfully. Now, who is who is to decide rightfully is again the discretion of the opposition parties. And the reason I ask you this question is because recently, after the Google Doc with tweet of Greta, the name of Disha Ravi, another accomplice from India, also apparently so-called environmental activist, but looks like she also collaborated on preparing the draft, which has many issues that are not pro-India. In fact, it is to harm India. But opposition have come in support of this 21, 22-year-old Bangalore-based environmental activist Disha Ravi. How do you see, even before getting all the information, opposition start supporting and anybody who for who the law is taking or considering to take any action, opposition start speaking in their favor. So how do you see this phenomena in India?
Well, it goes both ways in a sense that when BJP was in opposition or during the Indira Gandhi time and during emergency time, they also try to cultivate international opinion in their favor or their opinion. So in democracy, as any protest, whether it's uh, through TV media or social media, as long as it's not hurt, it does not hurt security of the national security of the country, then I think, and it stays within the country, then any protest is usually should be welcome, as long as it's not leading to inciting any violence or inciting any unnecessary damage and destruction of the country. So peaceful protest is always welcome. Now again, in case of Disa Ravi, we do not know exact right now whether she was involved with the other outside element or unwanted element or not. So I think government should investigate her. But again, in democracy, the investigation has to be done according to law. It means everyone is innocent unless you prove that they have by investigation that their intention was not good, not right, and they have malicious what you call malicious way of working. And if it is so, then they should be punished by law.
Absolutely. So I think I would just fill in what we have read in the newspapers from Delhi police. She also sent WhatsApp message to Greta to delete that Google Doc, and she mentioned that they would come under Unlawful Practices Act. So she probably was aware that she's doing something which is legally not kosher. But moving towards another side, which is another feather in the cap of Indian government or India, that supplying vaccines and even Prime Minister of Canada calling an overall. How do you see this supplying of vaccine to so many countries has given a real boost to India's image?
Yes, yes, of course. It boosts to the India image. That shows that India has arrived at the world stage, and India can be very contributory and very helpful to the people of the globe. Particularly in the now, India is providing vaccine. That shows that manufacturing of the vaccine in India has been done in very high scale, and I think we all should be proud of it that India is come to the world stage as a leader in different sectors.
And in this context, there are some reports where researchers are working on studying what is it that has brought dramatically low impact of COVID-19 in India. Do you think it is something else in the immune system of Indians, or because many of them on the social media, as you see, have not followed the guidelines of social distancing that well, yet there are not that many cases.
Well, I mean, I think there must be something genetically in not only in India but whole Asia. And therefore, if you look at the numbers in Asia, in any country, it's relatively very low. So that shows that there is some scientific base for that. And I think scientists should investigate that and should study that and see whether it is true or not. And that's only explanation one can give why the number of cases are low in India or in the other Asian countries as compared to Europe and America.
Absolutely. And there are some traditional ways for healing or significance of some Indian spices like haldi, which now also is available here in America at certain stores, and they also sell some milk with haldi, etc. But referring to this, I bring for your attention another reference about which Prime Minister Narendra Modi today, while inaugurating virtually statue of one King Suhail Dev, he mentioned that history written with slave mindset is not true portrayal of the nation. Now, uh, do you agree with this statement that we have not uh, given correct picture of India's history in the independent India?
Probably. What Prime Minister said that he has some truth to it. Always when you are under someone's colonization by British for 200 years, whatever is written about India has some bias tend to it or twist to it. And I think I agree with the Prime Minister what he's saying that probably the history written for independence India it's probably not perfect or correct history as far as we are concerned.
Absolutely. And as we move towards the concluding part of our conversation today, India is a land of festivals, and festivals are also a way of reinforcing certain values in our system. So, this week we observed Vasant Panchami. As a child growing up in India, do you have any recollection of how this festival was observed, and what is the significance of Vasant Panchami for you?
Well, I think what I correctly, I think Vasant Panchami meant to, do the puja of the Saraswati. And if I'm not wrong, and because I'm not very ritual person, but what I remember that we used to do the sloka which related to Saraswati on the day of Vasant Panchami. And I think Vasant Panchami is very auspicious day in the Indian Hindu calendar. And that's what I remember. And all good thing people starts in Vasant Panchami.
Absolutely. I want to thank you on that. And as we move to say goodbye, I would say you were right. Goddess Saraswati, known as the goddess of knowledge and art forms, is also worshipped. So we have heard that knowledge is power. May the power of knowledge bring about harmony in our lives. With that greeting and wishes on Vasanta Panchami, your parting words for our viewers.
Well, dear friends, still I would like to remind everyone that vaccines are available now. We have almost 3 vaccines available in USA. So whenever you get chance to get the vaccine, please get it. Do not hesitate it. Do not believe unnecessary rumors on social media. The vaccine are relatively very safe, and that's only way to end this pandemic. So please get the vaccinated and follow all the CDC guideline even after vaccination. Then hopefully by summer we all should be free from this pandemic. So please remember that, get vaccinated. So with that, I would like to say that God bless India, God bless America, and God bless Indian American community. Goodbye. We'll see you next week again, same time. Thank you.
Dr. Balram Singh has presented important views and his insight in his book, A Different Takes. A virtual discussion was organized by the Indian Consulate. Author interacted and shared how Indian traditions and the inspiration coming from Ram, Krishna, and Gandhi plays a significant role in building our lives. Here are some parts of that event.
The cultural mission and practice in India, that there is nothing beyond your discussion and conversation. Especially, I read India's constitution that says that in Article 51A said that is the duty of every citizen of India to develop a scientific temper. So I got more emboldened even as a scientist, and I thought I can take on anything and everything with my best intentions. The most important thing that I thought is going to be a message that needs to be conveyed to the rest of the world, that what India has been and could be. And also in the process, I realized that there is so much communication that needs to be done to Indians, especially in the intellectual class, the political class, and the iconic class of models, role models like athletes and film industry or something like that. I took upon everybody. And so one of the last point I want to make is that one of the issues that came up, taken on so many people, and India is a very litigated country, and people will get offended very easily if they find out that you wrote something about them like that. And so the publisher said that you have to get somebody to write forward so that at least you are protected. And so I contacted Dr. Subramanian Swamy. And he's such a kind man. He has come several times to my campus, and he knows that I mean the best for everybody, actually, even those who I'm criticizing sometimes. That has included sometimes the diplomatic corps. And I'm so glad that Consul General has not minded that I have said, but my intention was always to make the best. Their job, my job, everybody else's job, and just like we want to consider Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So I'm very grateful to Dr. Subramanian Swamy that he agreed, and he wrote 7 pages of foreword. So I think I'm well protected, and now I see that India's real culture, real practice that is practiced by the Consul General, that is practiced by the people who are reading this book and have written some reviews. And I'm so grateful to Jeffrey Armstrong, who is my great friend for last 15, 20 years, with whom I have differed a lot. And then we still remain friends, which is the culture of India. And I met with Professor Manisha Mehrotra maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and have learned so much about what she does and what she's interested in. I'm learning more and more every time.
This book, it somehow goes deep into the mind of a person who's grappling with various issues of his own existence, and at the same time of India. And that is this mind space, trying to unlock the mind of a person who's deeply rooted, and what he thinks makes for a very interesting read and makes you ponder and think harder. My own sense going through the book was that it is a book that must be read slowly, for you have to absorb it to understand. It is something like yoga. You have to do a little bit of it on a daily basis so that you go to the deepest point of its understanding and observation. That is a session that I would have for the readers. But just to say that I look forward to this discussion. It is a fascinating book. And with that, I look forward to the engaging discussion, and I look forward to what our dear friends, Mr. Armstrong and Madam Mehrotra, would have to say, and what take Professor Singh would have on the book. Thank you very much.
It's a wonderful discourse. And as I've been reflecting upon it, there's a saying, because when I studied psychology, this is obviously something that you think about, is that there's a chemistry between people. But that someone should be a scientist and be a chemist, and also be a psychologist and a sociologist, and have a wide vision and scope of humanity. It reminds me of something. When you're rooted in a small town, you always have small town understanding. But when you go to the big city, then you have both perspectives. And this particular book feels to me like a chemistry set. It feels like Professor Singh has given us the tools for conversing about humanity, but he's given them to us as a scientist, as a sociologist, from a perspective inside the culture and from its most biodiverse, primal place where he was rooted, and then he went all the way to the peak of the mountain So he's given us the entire perspective. Though we've been friends for so many years, when I read the book, I was just so excited and delighted to see that he'd given us a chemistry set for talking about each other without having any conflict, a humorous looking at our various foibles and different aspects of us, seeing how we mix together. So to me, it's such a brilliant contribution to this conversation because it ensures that it remains a friendly conversation as we continue to ask what's going to happen as we continue combining together. So that's my first observation, that it sets an amazing scientific context for a social conversation that's often been thought difficult to have. He made it so easy. He's taught by his example how user-friendly it is.
That entire heritage of India, what we talking here in this book, has been so beautifully, portrayed in the ghats and the banks of Ganges, what I have grown and seeing it. So in this book, actually, I got to reflect my childhood and the olden days when most of the people in India had a daily ritual of going to the ghats on the banks of Ganges, taking bath, which was a very necessary thing to do to begin the day for. But now, as the time has rolled forward, we have all got busy with our own different things. But still, there is that little, I would say, that Indian thing, the Indianness, which is still there. There are very few cities in India where we still get to see that. So for my perspective, I read that entire book and I found it a very refreshing take on few of the things. Like, actually, I had never thought of Lord Ram or Krishna to be an NRI perspective. So when I read that word, it was really something very strange and a very deep thought to ponder upon. And the way Sir explained it in the book, it actually gave a lot of insights that how our Vedic rishis, the Vedic traditions of the Sanatan Parampara, all of the rishis and all of the, the whole elitist group of the people who had compiled different entire Vedic Samhitas had said things, but they were all symbolic. So in today's time, we need modern rishis like Balram Singh Sir, who could really, decipher those and decode those meanings, those metaphors.
Welcome back. You're watching Vision of Asia Voice of Community on ITV Gold. We are so happy that you could join us this Sunday. The program comes to you Sunday weekly edition at 11 a.m., Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursdays at 8 p.m. special editions of Vision of Asia. Thank you very much for being a part of this journey of sharing and celebrating achievements as well as participating in concerns of our community. Program continues right after these short messages. Stay with us. While we all are used to using social media, be it Facebook, be it WhatsApp, and there are multiple platforms which are connecting, energizing people. On the one hand, we have this free flow of information, but there is important power resting with these big tech companies. Sometimes that power have something in conflict with the law of the land. How this is playing out in India, India's democracy. We had some issues related to Indian government asking Twitter to take down some of the Twitter handles which government considered volatile and insightful. Dev Karlekar talked to us about this issue.
जो डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म है यह एक आप कहिए दुधारी तलवार
जी.
It's a dual-edged sword. What I meant is, it depends आप इसको किसके लिए यूज करना चाहते हो. अगर आप इसको जनहित के लिए यूज करोगे, राष्ट्रहित के लिए यूज करोगे, तो आपका देश फलेगा फूलेगा. अगर आप इसको देश के दुरुपयोग के यूज करोगे, जनहित को दुखाने के लिए यूज करोगे, so it will backfire. तो ट्विटर हो या एनी डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म, आप ट्विटर कहिएगा, फेसबुक कहिएगा, इंस्टाग्राम कहिएगा, व्हाट्सएप, टेलीग्राम, and many such, these are nothing but, I call it the new age bazooka, which is meant to have an equal footing. जो कहते हैं कि मीडिया यूज्ड टू बी बायस्ड, बिका हुआ मीडिया, एक जमाने में कहते थे, जनरल वीके सिंह ने एक वर्ड कॉइन किया था, प्रेस्टिट्यूट। तो टू ब्रिंग द इक्वल फुटिंग ग्राउंड, जो आम जनता है वह भी अपना कथन बयान करे, दूध का दूध पानी का पानी करे, और इसीलिए सोशल मीडिया का एक बड़ा अहम महत्व है। एंड व्हाट यू सी, आप आंखों देखी कह रहे हो कि डोनाल्ड ट्रम्प जी को सस्पेंड किया उनका लॉगिन, इट्स पार्ट ऑफ द सेम इकोसिस्टम।
अच्छा देव, एक मिनट, हम भारत जब चलते हैं तो जिस तरह का नैरेटिव बिल्ड होता है उसमें भी सोशल मीडिया इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है। तो अभी जो हालात आप देख रहे हैं, जैसे अभी ये जो दिशा रवि के अरेस्ट को लेकर जो ट्वीट्स हो रहे हैं कि भाई वो एनवायरमेंटल एक्टिविस्ट है, उसको क्यों गिरफ्तार कर लिया, जबकि पुलिस का वर्जन ये है कि शी हैज़ बीन अ पार्ट ऑफ preparing a document which doesn't serve India well. In fact, भारत तोड़ने वाले कुछ योजनाओं के साथ उसका संबंध रहा है। तो ये जो बैलेंस लगता है आपको, या ऐसा लगता है कि नैरेटिव सिस्टमेटिकली टिल्ट किया जा सकता है?
बहुत उम्दा सवाल है आपका अशोक जी। अगर आप देखें दिशा रवि जी जिन पे यह आरोप है कि शी आउटसोर्स्ड द एंटायर वेस्टर्न मीडिया गैंग का जो एक नैरेटिव था टू मलिन भारत की छवि बिगाड़ने के लिए, दिशा रवि जी ने आर्टिकल लेके वह उन्होंने आप जिनका भी आप नाम ले रहे हो उनको उन्होंने दिया, फॉर विच शी वॉज पेड मनी। मसला ये हुआ जब ग्रेटा ने वो जो डॉक्यूमेंट अपलोड किया गलती से, उसके अंदर सारों की पोल खुल गई। एंड देयर इज अ ब्रीड कॉल्ड एथिकल हैकर्स। एथिकल हैकर्स ये वह लोग हैं जो राष्ट्र प्रेमी हैं, जो पुटिंग अ सर्वेलेंस एंड विजिलेंस ऑन दिस एंटी नेशनल पीपल, और वह दूध का दूध पानी का पानी करते। तो जो टीम थी उन्होंने पर्दाफाश कर लिया, और अब अगर देखिएगा आईबी मिनिस्ट्री और जो भारत का जो इंफॉर्मेशन मीडिया मिनिस्ट्री है वह इसकी छानबीन करेगा। पुलिस अपना काम कर रही है। अगर दिशा रवि ने कुछ गलत काम किया नहीं है, शी हैज टू प्लीड हर इनोसेंस, और कार्रवाई अपना समय लेके वह दिखाएंगे कि वो निर्दोष है तो निर्दोष हो जाएंगी। अगर उन्होंने कुछ गलत काम किया नहीं है तो उनको कुछ डरने की जरूरत नहीं है। हाँ, लेकिन गलत काम किया है तो शी डेफिनेटली डिजर्व।
अच्छा, तो आपने जी देव, आपने पढ़ा होगा कि जो उन्होंने व्हाट्सएप मैसेज भेजा था ग्रेटा थर्म को, उसमें उन्होंने लिखा था कि तुम इसको डिलीट कर दो, इसमें मेरा नाम है, और यूपीएपी वो जो अनलॉफुल प्रैक्टिस वाला जो एक्ट है उसमें वो पकड़ी जा सकती है, ऐसा अंदेशा उसने खुद लिखा था। तो उसको पता है कि कुछ न कुछ जो वो कर रही है वो अपने आप किसी कारण से सही समझती हो, या जैसे आपने कहा पैसे लेके किया हो, जो कि हमें पता नहीं ठीक से, लेकिन देयर वाज दिस अवेयरनेस कि मैं कुछ तो गलत कर रही हूँ। बट स्टिल देयर आर मेनी वॉइसेस इन सपोर्ट ऑफ हर और मेकिंग हर अपीयर कि एज ए विक्टिम है वो जैसा। तो ये वाला जो सीन है, इसको लेके मैं थोड़ा आगे चलता हूँ। इंडियन गवर्नमेंट का टग ऑफ वॉर जैसा रहा ट्विटर के साथ में, क्योंकि कुछ ऐसे हैशटैग वो प्रमोट कर रहे थे जिसको सरकार के अनुसार बैन किया जाना आवश्यक था, क्योंकि वो देश में उपद्रव बढ़ा सकते थे। तो ये टैग कंपनीज जो कि इंटरनेशनल है, ग्लोबल हैं, उनके ऊपर अलग अलग देशों की, खासकर भारत की सरकार का कितना अधिकार है, होना चाहिए, आप क्या सोचते हैं?
बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन पूछा। आपको मैं ये भी बता दूं, ट्विटर, फेसबुक, they do not exist in China, North Korea and many countries they are banned. हर एक कंट्री का एक सॉवरेनिटी होती है, हर एक कंट्री का एक आईबी डिपार्टमेंट होता है, एक लॉ डिपार्टमेंट होता है, और उसी के दायरे में the agencies and the companies has to work for. ट्विटर, फेसबुक not being an exception to. ट्विटर ने बहुत सारे वायलेशन किए हैं इन द पास्ट फॉर विच दे वर सर्व्ड नोटिसेस। कहते हैं ना कि तारीख पे तारीख, तारीख पे तारीख, वैसे आपने नोटिस पे नोटिस भेज दिए और तभी अगर आप देखिएगा लॉ मिनिस्ट्री की जो हमारे मिनिस्टर है, उन्होंने एक स्टर्न नोटिस ऑफ एक्शन उनको दी है, कहा है कि अगर ट्विटर को भारत में रह के उनका कार्य करना होगा, बिकॉज दे आर मेकिंग बिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स एट द बिहेस्ट ऑफ इंडियन सब्सक्राइबर्स एंड यूजर्स, तो वो भारत की जो अधिनियमता है उसके दायरे में उनको काम करना है। अगर वो भारत को तोड़ने का काम करेंगे, अगर वो भारत की छवि को ठेस पहुंचाने का काम करेंगे, अगर वो जो लेफ्टिस्ट प्रेस्टिट्यूट टुकड़े टुकड़े गैंग के साथ में मिलके एक नैरेटिव को सेट करने की कोशिश करेंगे, देन इट इज रॉन्ग। डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म का काम होता है, इट्स एन इंडिपेंडेंट प्लेटफॉर्म कि जिसमें लोग अपना मत रख सके। लेकिन जब आप देखिएगा, आपने एक तरफ ट्रम्प साहब को बैन किया, लेकिन दूसरी तरफ देश जला रहे हैं, लोगों को मार रहे हैं, पुलिस को पीट रहे हैं, उनको आपने खुला, उनका ट्विटर अभी भी चल रहा है, उनको आपने खुली छूट दी है।
Senior journalist Rohit Vyas has his eyes on the political pulse of USA. He talked to us about his impressions of the potential impact which we have witnessed from the acquittal of President Trump after he was impeached second times. And this acquittal from Senate has many lessons as well as various interpretations from different people. Here is a balanced view by Rohit Vyas.
President Donald Trump's acquittal. He was charged for inciting violence on the January 6th Capitol riot attack, and he was charged and he was impeached, but he was acquitted. So my first question to you has to be, how are you looking at this acquittal? Were you expecting it?
Oh yeah, 100%, because a vast number of the Republicans, especially in the Senate, are looking to take his lead, are looking toward his base of supporters. And I don't think any of them had any interest, any self-interest, to be more specific, in finding themselves face another election and an uphill battle at that. I think all of them want to tap into Donald Trump's base, which is sizable. He does have a huge following, even though he lost the presidential race last year. The fact is that he does have that following, and a lot of people who aspire to higher office, maybe the presidency itself, want to tap into Donald Trump's followers. And so therefore the last thing they wanted to do was to annoy those followers and be a part of the process of convicting the former president. And therefore this vote was quite expected, in my opinion.
How did you look at the Republican senators who voted to convict him? You know, I believe it was 57 senators total that voted. How did you look at that?
Yeah, 7 Republicans went with the idea of conviction and with the ruling of conviction, and I think that shows that there are many with a conscience in there. The fact was that this was tried on the merits of the case, which was the fact that the former president, or at least the presentation was that the former president had incited the January 6th riot that took place on the Capitol, an affront to democracy, an insult to democracy, to be even more specific. And I think there were some people with a conscience who stood up and said, that's about enough. Even Mitch McConnell, the minority leader in the Senate, who voted to acquit, had made it very clear and continues to make it clear in the aftermath of that ruling of the Senate decision that what happened is not by any means excusable. And he's given one of the ways out, which is that while the Senate, in his opinion, was not in a position to convict a former president, as opposed to a sitting chief executive, he did say that there was recourse in regular courts of the United States to try him on such charges in a regular courthouse. So even he spoke with something of a conscience to say, look, what happened was totally unconscionable.
Right. There were some troublesome videos that we saw during this entire trial, videos that were not seen before. How did you look at those?
Oh, those were frightening. Those were from the presentation of those videos, it appeared to be a well-planned attack, not something that was spontaneous or just spurred by the former president's words, but something that was in the planning and in the mode of an attack plan on top of it. So there were it seemed some of it was planned with military precision as well. And as it turns out, many of those arrested have had backgrounds in the armed forces. Many have had backgrounds even in the FBI. There was one prime suspect who, it turned out, used to be with the FBI at one time, and he had top security clearance. And there are many, many such instances that are playing out as more and more information becomes available and as more is known about the suspects involved. So this was by no means a spontaneous act. It was not an act where people were just riled into doing something, but rather a well-planned operation.
Right. Before I get into what happened today and what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said, President Joe Biden throughout the trial basically took a back seat and didn't comment much on what was happening. Do you think that was deliberately done, and was that wise on his part?
Yeah, I think it was wise on his part. I think it was deliberate, obviously. He has indicated from the beginning, once the election was over, he made it very clear. In fact, before the election was over, and it seemed like he might ultimately be elected president of the United States, he was telling party colleagues and others that would soon be in power that he'd rather see this on the back burner. He doesn't want to play this whole thing out because it's going to take away attention from the agenda of the Biden administration. And the Biden administration's agenda is very clear, is to get a good handle on this pandemic, is to revive the economy, to get us back to a pre-pandemic jobs situation, which was almost 100% employment, and that type of thing. He wants the focus to be on what he wants to do to save America for all Americans. And I think he really didn't want to have this played out and butt its way into his administration's efforts to make some progress now and to take control of the country and have the nation heal.
Right. I think that's his biggest thing, is to have the nation heal. He actually referred to the Capitol attack as a sad chapter in American history, which should be remembered by all. On the Capitol attack, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is calling for a 9/11 style commission to investigate the January 6th riot. This happened after 9/11 to truly investigate what was happening in the nation in regards to the incident. How are you looking at that? And today, President Joe Biden has backed that investigation. How important will that investigation be, and how different will that be from the trial we saw?
Yeah, that would be because of it. Well, first of all, a good question. It would be a bipartisan. In fact, it would be an independent inquiry. If you have a 9/11 style commission or a John F. Kennedy assassination commission, anything like this, something that's big, that has a historic meaning or historic context in the nation, it is extremely important that this be independent. So I think what's going to happen, if a commission is appointed, it would be an independent commission. It would look at all the facts, regardless of any party lineage or anything like that, and therefore come to some kind of objective decision as to what went wrong, how this happened, how it was allowed to happen, who the perpetrators were, where did the planning take place, and most important, how to prevent something like this from happening in the future. After all, this was an attack on the very soul of our democratic nation, on the very soul of our democracy, as it were. I don't think anybody disputes that, except those who had an interest in carrying out the act itself. I think anybody who has a conscience, whether in politics, in religion, in state, they all felt the same way, that this was an attack on our very soul of American democracy. And it's time to find out, get to the truth of it, get to the truth behind it, and figure out how to stop it in future.
And now time to say goodbye from today's Vision of Asia. But let me remind you, we have a vibrant presence on Facebook. Do become friends with IT Gold's Facebook page, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel. Keep writing to us, events@itvgold.com. Stay safe, stay healthy, take care. Once again, with lots of thanks, this is Ashok Vyas. Namaste.